Welcome back to CVine International News Network. I'm Linda Forsythe.
And I'm Leonard Bacani.
And we are here today to do part 3 of 4 of our Military Tribunal Rumor Squashing series. And I'll tell you, the rumors are really flying, and we are here to make certain that they are no longer rumors. You now know the facts. You know what, Leonard, why don't you go ahead and read this article that we have written on our cvine.com website.
Okay. Well, the purpose of these reports and videos in the rumor squashing series is to do what the title says, to squash the rumors with proof of all assertions. All of these questions that are covered came from you, we the people. If a rumor or question is not addressed in this report, it's because it was already covered in previous reports, or we will address it in future reports. We've stopped repeating ourselves, but we will provide all the links to previous materials for your research convenience. So when you go on the c-vine.com website, you can not only read all our past articles, but we will include all the links, which will include links to the Department of Defense and transcripts to the KSM proceedings from January 28th and January 29th. Do you want to know what is really going on during the tribunals and what it all means? Catch up and keep up, because this is just the beginning and much more is coming at the breakneck speed. Our videos should help. Some of you have expressed concern about joining the CVine Facebook group page, and that's understandable, or to partake in discussions, ongoing discussions there, and having to do with our news release and video content.
You know, this is the concern they seem to have. There's some people just don't want to be on Facebook.
Right.
And so, well, anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, and that's why we created a platform, c-vine.com, where people can go in and discuss things freely without censorship.
On our forum.
Yes.
So it's c-vine.com. We have our own forum where we're opening up the doors to you now. You don't have to go to Facebook if you don't want to. And we're throwing up the doors internationally. There are multiple different countries available that you can have these forums in for discussion.
So you need to become a member and post your thoughts with the understanding that we have an army of moderators that ban at the first hint of being a troll or a troublemaker. We are depending on the users on the forums to report if they see anything. Respect each other at all times. Nothing less will be tolerated. Enjoy uncensored speech without commercials. Otherwise, we continue to have a great deal of discussion, debate, research going on our Facebook group page at c-vine International News Network. Be aware that because of massive growth we've had over a short period of time, we have turned off the ability for users to post on their own stories on the Facebook group page, but everyone can freely comment and discuss the post materials placed on there by the CVine volunteer admins. When over 10,000 people are posting news stories of interest, it had become impossible to vet for accuracy and the madhouse of confusion. This was on top of vetting every single new member and all members' comments. Turning off the ability for anyone to post has helped a great deal to keep everyone on point about the discussion going on in one of the posts that are usually news releases. Remember, this group is specifically for investigations and discussions of existing news stories. Getting rid of confusion is paramount. For the time being, new posts are allowed on c-vine forum on our website until, again, it becomes unmanageable to keep order. Then we'll deal with it at that point. But we have an announcement from the Department of Defense. The KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed et al. Military Tribunal proceedings schedules have changed. The next round was originally scheduled to begin again on March 18th. The current schedule now will begin on March 25th through the 29th. This change was actually an amendment to the tribunal calendar for a multitude of other time changes as follows, with and including link. On July 30th, 2018, the Commission issued AE 5781, setting forth the current scheduled hearing for calendar year 2019 at the U.S. Naval Station, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The Commission amends AE 578D to shorten the March 2019 hearing from the 18th through the 29th, and shortened it to the March 25th through 29th, 2019. So additionally, what?
Well, I was just going to say, in other words, they chopped off a week.
Right. And you know what? This goes on. It gives the schedule basically every month or every other month, all up until November 15th. So initially, the proceedings are about 10 days of proceedings. So what they've essentially did was half that. And so now the proceedings are only 5 days in length instead of 10 days.
Now, this is of significance.
Yes.
And just keep a hold of those thoughts. Go ahead, Leonard.
Well, part 3 of our rumor squashing series of questions. What was the policy in previous years about open tribunals? Why the pretrial military tribunals with KSM et al. Are critical of importance to watch closely? What does the law say now about military tribunals remaining open to the public? Discussion of President Trump's executive order, the amendments to the manual for courts martial United States. Why is this significant? Was there an order given for a closed hearing to happen the next day after the Gitmo judge had a medical emergency? And what was it? You want to go over the first question?
I'll go over the next couple of questions,
Okay,
because they pretty much tie into each other.
All right.
And please keep in mind with these questions why they are of critical importance for you to hear and understand is because of exactly what is happening right now within the tribunal proceedings. So please pay close attention so you can get what the point is we are getting to. The first question, what was the policy in previous years about open tribunals? The answer to this question and some of the additional questions come from an excellent report that we found. It was from the Nation's newspaper, that's what it's called, and the title is Justice Can't Be Done in Secret: Why Public and Press Have a Right to Witness Military Tribunal Proceedings, written by Edward J. Claris. It was written on May 23rd of 2002, and the link to the source is provided there. So highly recommend you go and look at that. But to go over a couple of things in having to do with this particular question, there were a number of criticisms raised against the preliminary order issued by the Bush administration at that time in November of 2001. The government will, for example, permit defendants to have, this is what it said, the government will, for example, permit defendants to have court-appointed military lawyers. Defendants will be presumed innocent until proven guilty, which military tribunals, I believe, was the other way around. And the death penalty sentences must now be unanimous. On the key question of whether trials will be held in secret, however, the government answered its critics somewhat misleadingly. Now, this is a sentence you need to pay very close attention to. The regulations do state that trials should be open, but they also give the judges complete discretion to close the proceedings to the press and the public for just about any reason. The regulations also stress that no provision in this order shall be construed to be a requirement of the United States Constitution. That's another biggie. Okay, so the report was written by the Nation Press, nation's press in order to argue why things should be done differently and why the order, as it stood in 2002, infringed on the rights of the press and the public. The report gives an entire group of extensive argument, court cases used as precedent, and constitutional amendments on exactly why the rules put into place by the Bush administration for military tribunals infringed on the rights of the citizenry. Looking back to what was said in this report brings up a few, quite frankly, alarming problems with the Bush mandates. Why did they structure them in this way? Why change the rules for these proceedings? Why indeed? It is critical that the public takes the time to learn and understand what was happening here because it gives rise to some very serious questions that need to be answered. Can the rulings of one single judge overrule or supersede some of our rights? These amendments put into place by the Bush administration appear to be that that's exactly what the case was. But Trump changed all that. An entire discussion blog can be held on this question alone, and we are going to be having that discussion on our Facebook group page, C-Vine International News Network. So go ahead and become a member and get into this discussion.
So previously, when they first established these Gitmo proceedings or trials, this detention facility in Guantanamo Bay, so you're saying the judge could postpone or cancel proceedings anytime for any reason that he wanted. He had the authority to do that.
He could close. The
Okay.
proceedings from public scrutiny,
Right.
and including not only public scrutiny, but from press scrutiny.
Okay. So he can even close the proceedings from and prevent press from even covering it. So now you have President Trump that comes in, and through executive order, he changes all those military court proceedings so that he invites actually the press, and he invites a public forum and to be more transparent. That's a marked difference.
Well, that's a huge
policy.
difference, especially since mainstream media isn't covering this at all. And anyway, that's why we're here. So let's move on to the second question. What does the law say now about military tribunals remaining open to the public? Another point quoted from the nation's report, this was back in 2002, these are things that they were bringing up in order to argue why certain things needed to be put in place. In both federal courts and courts martial, it is now clear that these rights belong to the public, not to the government or the defendant, or are fundamentally necessary for the effective functioning of our criminal justice system. Neither the defendant nor the government, nor both jointly, can shield a proceeding from public view without meeting the stringent constitutional test. Military tribunals are the functional equivalent of federal courts and courts martial in terms of the press public's right of access. The tribunals will act as a theater of justice, where those who allegedly sought to terrorize and undermine the United States will be tried. While the defendants may not have constitutional rights because they are non-citizens captured abroad, the press and public do not give up their rights based solely on the forum chosen by the president. That's unquote. So, what do we do to fix this? Enter President Trump and his executive order that went into effect on January 1st, 2019 of this year. Coincidentally, just before the KSM et al. Pretrials started.
Not coincidence.
There is no such thing as coincidence, right? If you listen to the discussion of the KSM et al. Transcripts that Leonard and I read over having to do with the January 29th proceedings, you will then begin to understand why the defense team was arguing so hard for the proceedings to remain open and why the judge had to now meet a very high bar if he intended to close the proceedings. And that is what the judge was trying to do at that time. And you need to go back and listen to part 2 of the actual military tribunal transcripts that Leonard and I were going over and discussing at that time. You need to pay very close attention because of this very reason. Okay, so why the judge had to now meet this very high bar of standards in order to close the hearings? The arguments for closing the hearings, according to the defense, did not meet that high bar according to the amendments put into place in the manuals for courts-martial United States. Now, ask yourself, why would the defense team for the alleged terrorists be fighting so hard to keep the proceedings open to the public? What do you think they want us to hear? If you missed the January 29th video discussion, we have a link there that's not only on the YouTube, lower down in that section there, this time we know where to put it, but also in this report that we are reading from right now from our c-find.com website, which gives all the links of everything that we're mentioning here. Okay, let's move on.
Well, before we move on, let's throw in a hypothetical question in there. Let's put our investigator caps on and just start posing hypotheticals. What do you think that the defense team wants to bring out? Do you think maybe hypothetically that they want to show that their defendants or their clients were not the masterminds as the government has alleged them to be, but just patsies?
These are just theories.
Just theories.
He's putting on his little investigator cap.
Theories only.
Yes, which is, important, as he said. That's how private investigators work, is they bring up theories and work out a hypothesis and so on. So that's what we're doing here. So moving on to the third question, why the pretrial military tribunals with KSM et al. Are of critical importance to watch very, very closely. Now, a number of people have clearly stated to me on multiple different venues that these KSM et al. Pretrials are boring and they're of little interest. They state these alleged terrorists have been in Gitmo for a multitude of years, and this is as far as we are in the proceedings. I mean, pre-trials phrase, really? In the meantime, a number of high-profile politicians run around free with a multitude of extremely suspicious allegations against them, and nothing's being done.
I get so frustrated hearing that. I hear people all the time, and rightly so. They want justice. They want swift justice. Okay, they don't want it in their minds. They're thinking, why do I want to hear about terrorists? About an incident that occurred. Many years ago. I want to see the big guns. I want to see the stars get prosecuted, and that's understandable.
Well, you know what? Hold on to your hat.
That's right.
And also, you are now about to find out why this has been taking so long. So listen closely, because things are about to change rapidly. Okay, considering that what we just did is we answered the first question, we're going to have to take the time to really listen closely to this, because you are going to have to think critically on your own. And you already have the answer right now, but maybe you just need to look in a little bit of a different direction or a different set of eyes. So let me lay a few things out for your consideration. The original Bush mandates had given the appearance of doing whatever possible to keep many important pieces of information away from the public eye, utilizing the guise of protecting our nation's security. Now, our nation's security, of course, is of paramount importance,
right.
But a judge who can unilaterally decide on whether proceedings stay open or closed is suspect. In fact, it can override much else put into place for the rights of the public and the press. Now, interesting points have been brought up elsewhere in other situations that have infringed on our constitutional rights by having a judge issue an edict. Trump's emergency executive order in the past about the travel ban that originally halted the unimpeded influx of unvetted immigrants from known terrorist nations into our country come to mind. The Ninth Circuit Court had been quite busy stopping Trump, who had every right to issue that ban. And the linked discussion describing exactly what happened is provided for you. It has been since ruled that Trump's travel ban be upheld by the Supreme Court, as stated in the following New York Times article, after a significant amount of time passed because of the appeal process. That link is also available for your perusal. Trump had broadly criticized the increasingly common practice of individual federal judges bringing unilateral halts to executive branch policy, which had already happened in more than 24 times under the Trump administration. 24 times. The president specifically cited the Ninth Circuit's injunction against his ban on travel from several Muslim-majority nations, which was ultimately ruled a constitutional exercise of presidential authority this year by the Supreme Court. Now, during this confirmation hearing in 2018 last year, Associate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was asked by Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy about the constitutionality of individual federal judges issuing nationwide injunctions against presidential action. And a phenomenon that has actually attracted scrutiny after district court judges unilaterally brought about temporary halts to Trump's travel ban and many other initiatives. Kavanaugh demurred, saying that he could not discuss potential pending issues before the Supreme Court. So, another reason for the big hullabaloo, maybe, that went on to do anything possible in preventing Kavanaugh being appointed as SCOTUS. So we have that link there also. Now, what's going on here? We're talking about endless delay tactics here that ultimately spell out obstruction of justice. But it's done legally because of laws that are put in place. Okay? So with that being said, they went ahead and obstructed Trump from being able to carry out this executive order, and it had to go through all the way up through to the Supreme Court before it finally ruled that, what Trump did was perfectly acceptable. So it went through. Last but not least, do you not realize that since public access and close scrutiny has been corrected in that it is not so easy for these trials to be closed during questioning of the alleged terrorists? We, the people, can hear if there were other orchestrators of the 9/11/2001 attacks. In other words, if 9/11 was an inside job and these terrorists were used as proverbial henchmen to carry out the orders from another source, and if these henchmen are named with corroborated proof that it was an inside job, it could bring down the entire house of cards.
Wow.
Called the Swamp.
Of course, this is just a theory.
Well, putting these things together, it's not so far-fetched. So rethink that these are just silly little pretrials, because I think you may be finding out, my gut feeling tells me, that these are going to be of consequential importance, especially when we go over what else we found out. POTUS is in town now, and he's in control.
That's right.
So,
well, let's go on. The fourth question: what is President Trump's executive order? Amendments to the Manual for Courts Martial United States, and why is this significant? Without going over the entire amendment on today's report, we are including a link directly to the PDF from the whitehouse.gov website. When you take the time to read it through, you will see where President Trump strategically attached new rules in place to protect we the people, so we all are given the ability to observe these critical military tribunals and to be provided with the transparency required so we know the truth, because President Trump is all about transparency.
Thank you, POTUS.
That's right. That's right. So the fifth question, was there an order given for the closed hearing to happen the next day after the Gitmo judge had a medical emergency? What was it? Well, the answer is yes. The judge, the military court judge at Gitmo, did give an order to close the hearings that were to happen the very next day on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. Right after that order was issued, the judge had his medical emergency of a retinal tear and had to be airlifted off Guantanamo Bay to a stateside hospital. Since then, an entire slew of mandates have been issued that will take a significant amount of time to go through here. One we already gave to you at the top of this report that shows the shortening of all the trial dates. It would be in the best interest of American people to start visiting the Department of Defense website to closely scrutinize everything that's going on. Much is going on. Once you get to the website, click on cases and then scroll down. You'll need to click on every single link to open it up and read the mandates. The Department of Defense website, it contains a lot of resources and details, court details such as court calendars when they're having courts, viewing sites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We list that website right on our report at c-vine.com.
Well, let's go over a little bit why this is huge. I mean, the amendments to the military tribunals, what is it called? What we're talking about here, the amendment, the executive order that Trump put out there, for the most part was making certain that these tribunals stay open. And the reason it's important is if you did not listen to the trials that we had brought out to you about what was happening, where that defense attorney was going into such detail about why it was important for the trials to be staying open and why the judge was not meeting that high bar that was put into place now because of this new executive order for closing the proceedings. And also it had to do with the questioning of Belushi?
Yes, al-Belushi.
Correct. That he was going to be questioned and there was going to be a translator available in order to be able to put onto record exactly what he said. That is what was going in the closed proceedings. Now, they, of course, are citing because of national security, but number one, there's a 40-second delay. Number two, their reasoning was because of the safety of the actual translator. And a couple of other things that could easily be mitigated and are mitigated many times in just regular federal or state courts of law. Right. So it just didn't wash. And after all of that was read to him, excuse me, he still closes it. And he closes it for the next day. And it was right after that the judge received that retinal tear, where the remaining 3 days of the proceedings were postponed to be to March 18th, which now were cut in half again by this new mandate. So, what do you think about that?
Well, let's connect the dots, so to speak, and let's just kind of wrap this up by saying, you have the previous administrations, or the last administration that did everything that they could to close these tribunals or to close up Gitmo altogether and to release all the detainees. You got to ask yourself, why is that? Why did previous administration want these terrorists loose?
Why did they, trade some very critical terrorists in for...
It's actually 5 terrorists, and they were high-level terrorists for a low-level deserter.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Yeah, it seems like, and sometimes they were just released
And they're
Just
also,
because.
yeah, you know, Obama also wanted to close down Gitmo, and
Well, you know what? Conversely, okay, you had a previous administration that wanted to close down Gitmo. This administration with President Trump, he has allocated $200 million to build up Gitmo. And what does that tell you? That means that there's going to be more cases, more military tribunals. We do know there's 80,000 sealed indictments that are in the shoe. Yeah, so there's going to be more defendants, more trials, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're seeing now is you have to show the foundation, how it ties into a lot of these cases that will be opened or unsealed in the future. Because this is theory. What if it could be shown that these criminal masterminds of 9/11 weren't actually the masterminds and were actually puppets? They were patsies.
And not only with 9/11, but we can go on about North Korea and the Middle East.
Absolutely.
So
that's going to open the door for a whole slew of things like that.
It's about to hit the fan, folks. And so they want you to not be interested in these proceedings. I should say the deep state.
And why are they, why do they want the proceedings to extend? Why are they cutting the time of the proceedings from 10-day sessions now to 5-day sessions? What are they? Are they waiting for 2020 perhaps?
It could be a lot of different things. But our point is this, people, listen to me. I just gave you multiple incidences of proven fact and links that you can fact check of situations over and over and over again. In fact, a couple of dozen times where judges have unilaterally given out edicts to obstruct Trump. The situations of what the things used to be like for military tribunals, making it easy for the proceedings to be closed at any given moment by one judge, for any reason. And then this situation coming about where Trump has gone out of his way to make it very difficult to close these proceedings, and yet they're going ahead and they're doing it anyway. They're doing it anyway. Now, you have the abilities right now to be able to watch what's going on. Keep in mind, the deep state thinks that we the people are stupid. The deep state thinks that we're not going to take the time to understand exactly what's going on in these proceedings. Or even if we did try, we're not going to get it. And nor would we connect the dots or to be able to think to such a degree that this would be such a conspiracy theory that they're going to throw okay, these people are totally whack jobs. What do you mean this could be a possibility? Well, you know what? I have a feeling that some things are going to be shown that shows really who the idiots have been in the respect of believing that we wouldn't open our eyes.
Well, I believe we are winning this war. President Trump has promised that he is draining the swamp, and that's what's happening. However, there are holdovers. The deep state does have footholds in portions of our government that haven't fully been rooted out yet. I'll just put it out there. Could the fact that the judge had a medical emergency on that day, after he made that ruling to close it down and to ensure that he was not going to return, could something nefarious have happened to the judge? We do know that in previous years, where in Cuba as well as China, we had ambassadors that have visited those countries. And Linda, you know that very well. Why don't you?
Well, we had put this out on our last video, so I'm going to go over it briefly for you guys to take your time and the effort to be able to fact check this. For a period of 2 years, there were some ambassadors going to Guantanamo Bay, or actually going to Cuba and also to China to be able to do their ambassador work. And in each place, some really strange things happened. There were changes in personality, aggression. There were situations of intracranial pressure increasing, and internal bleeding inside the head, and loss of hearing, and some brain damage, and many other different things that were happening to just about all of the people, that the ambassadors and their family that were visiting there. And it was just, they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they had to leave. They had to leave. And it has since been found with irrefutable evidence that there was some sort of energy weapon that was used with sound waves and etc. to be able to cause these damages that were originally created in order to help deal with crowd control and this type of thing. So there's all different types of energy weapons. But the only reason we bring that up, because it did happen, please go ahead and Google search it, or DuckDuckGo search it, to be able to find these things. And you will find out, read up on exactly what happens. In fact, we're going to go ahead and provide a link for you with that also. I'm going to have to put that on there. With that being said, people, this judge was in his early 40s and in good health. And as a retired nurse, I can tell you that a retinal tear is very rarely just happens spontaneously. If it does happen, it happens, in the elderly, where in this case it could possibly happen. But usually it happens because of some sort of trauma. So the judge was in court all day, sitting down, and then this happens. So that is pretty suspect, which is bringing it up as a theory for you to think about. Well, let's go ahead and close this up. I would request again that you go to c-vine.com, cvine.com, in order to become a member of our forum. For those of you that aren't Facebook aficionados, and you can go there and you can discuss these things however much you want, and of course we have our news and etc. there. Or if you want to go into what we have already established at our Facebook group page, which
News Network.
Yeah.
Facebook group page.
So, and then come back.
We also just started a Twitter page not too long ago.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's
we did.
Cvine News, at Cvine News, right?
Yeah. Wait, was it with a dash?
No, it's just Cvine News. CVINENEWS.
Right. So we just started that one. Could use your help in building that up. And so, well, I'll tell you what, you guys come back tomorrow and we will go ahead and we will do our 4 of 4, the final in our series. And so we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Until next time.
Good night, everybody.